Unbelievable! Young Magnus Carlsen confronts Garry Kasparov. For many in the chess world, confusion has persisted for a long time. Who is better, Garry Kasparov or Magnus Carlsen? We'll answer that question further in the video, so remember to watch till the end. Also, consider hitting the like button right now because you might not get a chance to do so later. Remember folks, when you subscribe to us, it keeps us going. Garry Kasparov is a 54-year-old Russian-origin chess grandmaster who is technically old enough to be the father of Carlsen. The fact that Kasparov retired back in 2005 makes comparing the two more difficult than ever imagined. If their abilities are to be reached now, then it would be a massive victory for Carlsen, as Kasparov, except for playing a few blitz tournaments, usually works as a commentator for chess games. On the other hand, Carlsen is in his prime, playing in big tournaments across the globe. Hence, various factors must be considered for the correct evaluation of their raw abilities. For that, we've decided to go back to that one match between these two, probably one of the few official matches ever played between the two chess legends. That battle happened long ago when Carlsen was a 13-year-old child. At the Blitz tournament, a young Magnus Carlsen was seen waiting for Kasparov to arrive at the table. Like in any Blitz game, time is of the utmost importance here, and the fact that Kasparov was late translated into a massive disadvantage for him. Finally, the Russian showed up and shook hands with Carlsen before settling down. Magnus played white and began the match with a pawn to d4. Kasparov replied with an orthodox queen's pawn opening. The stage was set for a game of momentous significance to happen. Magnus moved his next pawn forward even to c4, aiming to threaten the black pawn as Kasparov countered by moving his instrument to c6. This play by Kasparov was under the Slav defense. A critical feature of this defense is that it is used as a counter against the queen's gambit. The development of pieces continued as both sides tried to look forward to a showdown for the ages. Kasparov then began the game by moving the knight to d7. This move ensured the game became a queen's gambit. Magnus replied by allowing his pawn to occupy the e3 position. The intentions of Carlsen at this stage were straightforward. In any chess game, whichever player controls the center few squares tends to dictate the pace and direction of the match. Magnus wanted to achieve exactly that, to maintain the d4 and d5 squares and their vicinity. Kasparov decided it was high time to bring his queen into play. He transferred his queen over to the a5 square. The turn was extraordinarily swift and damaging as it managed to pin the knight of his opponent at c3. Magnus was forced to protect the pinned knight. The double knight strength guaranteed a moment of defense for the Norwegian. Carlsen was in a compromised position at this juncture. His position could have been better when compared to his opponent, as he had no control over the essential central squares. Kasparov decides to move his bishop to a b4 position, thus reinforcing the pin on the stricken knight. Carlsen was compelled to use more extensive power to settle the game. He brought his queen to the c2 position to defend the knights in a precarious position. Suddenly, there was a deadlock at the center and both sides went for a castling to protect their king. We noticed that you still need to subscribe to us, and wait a minute, you still need to like the video too. Come on guys, it's about time you do that. Post-castling, Kasparov decided to take the gauntlet by initiating an attack. He moved his pawn to d4 and secured a certain degree of control over the center. Magnus made a sleek attack. He moved his knight to the b3 position and managed to secure a fork over the queen and pawn of Kasparov. The effect of the move was startling. Caught up by a division, Kasparov was forced to retreat with his queen and try to gain control over the center by using a pawn charge. This resulted in another exchange at the center. However, the result this time was in favor of Magnus. The trade-off between the few minor pieces had revealed a very dominant position for Magnus with the bishop at c4. Time was running out for both of the players at this stage. Kasparov moved his queen to c7 to try using sheer power against his opponent, while Magnus agreed to activate a rook. At this juncture, the game tilted from one player to the other. As Carlsen had secured control over the central squares, Kasparov still had enough potential for a comeback. Things were slowly unraveling for both players. Kasparov moved his kingside pawn to an important h6 position. This simultaneously attacked Carlsen's bishop bishop positioned at a healthy g5 and was promptly forced to retreat. Kasparov then moved his bishop to d6. The move was electric and problematic for the young Magnus. The issue was that the positioning of the bishop and the queen allowed Kasparov to give Magnus a big check at a position with a little area for maneuver. Magnus had his king in a precarious position as the castling that protected the crown limited its activity to 2 squares. Moreover, if Kasparov managed to drag his queen over to h2, it would be over for Carlsen as the bishop supported the queen. However, the 13-year-old Carlsen was a strong player and saw through the attack. As a measure against it and to limit the damage, he moved his pawn to h3. The game was slowly reaching its climax and every proceeding had become extremely interesting for both players. Kasparov restarted the game by moving his bishop to a healthy h2 position. The effect also allowed for a check on Magnus's king, and as there was support from the queen, Magnus couldn't have taken the piece out of play. Kasparov then moved his knight in front of the queen, allowing Carlsen to take out the bishop with his king, even as Kasparov took out his knight. This was an equal trade of powers. Kasparov was dictating the course of play up till now, and all of a sudden Magnus found himself with the impetus to launch his attacks. He quickly placed his queen at c5 and coordinated the joint movement of multiple pieces. The aim was to launch an attack on the c6 square and try to regain possession. There was a short exchange of pawns as, after the trade, Carlsen had the lead in terms of power by an instrument after the transaction. He then moved his knight to d5 and threatened Kasparov with the unequal trade of a rook for a knight. Kasparov hastily moved his rook away from danger. Till now, Carlsen was enjoying the play from a very aggressive position. The tide of the game was definitely in favor of the Norwegian team now, as the world champion needed to catch up in strategy. After that, the game gathered speed. Kasparov moved his queen to g6 while threatening a check. Magnus did just enough by blocking the potential attack with his queen. This allowed for a potential queen trade between the two, a work that Kasparov accepted with little hesitation. With that, most of the more significant pieces of the game were gone. Even then, at this eve, there was probably the slightest advantage for Kasparov, as during the queen trade, Magnus ended up having 2 pawns on the g-line. This left the h-line prone to attack. This was followed by Kasparov attacking Magnus's backline. There was a fair trade of rooks at the e1 square. The game became intense and technical as they continued to trade pieces. In the end, Magnus could boast of a single pawn advantage. Both sides continued giving each other checks as they vied for a mistake or even an opening on the part of their opponent. Carlsen moved his rook to h1 to check Kasparov's king, and after some fair trades, Carlsen doubled his 1-pawn advantage. Kasparov retaliated by moving his rook to b2 in an attempt to threaten to take back a pawn and half the benefit. However, soon enough it was becoming imminent that the game could end only in a draw. That happened as both players agreed on a stalemate to top their epic clash. As a 13-year-old, Carlsen went toe-to-toe with the world chess champion to clearly display his abilities to the world. They could now expect to find a new chess champion in him in the future. Did you like this video? If you enjoyed it, please smash the like button and press the subscribe button to join our YouTube family. Keep watching Chesstics, because we promise to bring you the best videos when it comes to chess.